Pokemon Platinum is my favorite game of all time. I remember getting Pokemon Pearl for my birthday and Christmas along with my DS Lite all the way back in 2006. I played it endlessly, falling in love with the series like so many other kids had done. And when I saw the commercial for Pokemon Platinum a couple years later, I had to have it. Little did I know that this would be a game that I would cherish for years to come. Due to being small and feeble, none of my teams had cohesion, and if I managed to make it to Cynthia, she would inevitably wipe the floor with me. I would get frustrated and start the game all over again, slowly iterating on my team building and strategies. It wasn't until high school, almost a decade after getting Pokemon Pearl, that I would finally defeat her. This felt like the culmination of my personal development. I could read the story. I could understand the types, the moves, and the power of the Pokemon that I was using. I had grown, learned, and triumphed, but I still felt like I wanted more with this game. When I initially went to replay Pokemon Platinum this summer, I only intended to do a nostalgia playthrough. Infernape, Luxray, Staraptor, Roserade, Gastrodon, and Gardevoir, my usual staples. But the more I played, something strange happened. I wanted to play more. This game was different than the recent ones. Pokemon Platinum had sucked me back in a way that Sword and Shield or Scarlet and Violet never did. While playing, I realized that I loved this era of Pokemon, and looking at online opinions, I'm not alone. That's when I decided to dive all the way in. I began a project that would span multiple years, take me back to my childhood, teach me new things, and let me experience even more from my favorite game of all time. This is the story of my Pokemon Platinum Complete Trainer Card project. Chapter 1. Cobalt. In Generations 3 through 7, there was a trainer card tab in the menus. On this tab, it would display different information like playtime and trainer ID. This trainer card would have additional stars or colors added to it if you completed certain tasks. For Pokemon Platinum, there are 5 stars that we can obtain that will change the color of the trainer card each time we achieve them. The missions are as follows. Enter the Hall of Fame, complete the National Pokédex, win 1 Master Rank Pokemon contest, obtain the Platinum Flag in the Underground, and defeat 100 trainers in a row in the Pokemon Battle Tower. In today's video, we'll be tackling the Hall of Fame, something that I couldn't do for 10 years of my life. Since completing the game is a straightforward mission, I'm not going to talk about the journey too much. You all know how Pokemon Platinum plays by this point. Instead, I'm going to talk about Gen 4 as a whole and why I think it hooked me back in the way that it did. I'm also going to talk about how Generations 3 through 5 were peak of Pokemon and how the other games don't even come close. For the purposes of the Sinnoh journey, I mainly just took my time going through the region again, using some of my old friends. For now, let's discuss why Pokemon Platinum is my favorite game of all time. Chapter 1. The cons of Sinnoh. It might be weird to transition into things that I don't like about this game, but trust me, it'll make sense later. Mainly, I wanted to get the big arguments on why people don't like Sinnoh out of the way. First up is the speed. We've all seen the clip of Blissy's HP going down, but the slowness of the game extends so much more than that. For starters, and this just might be me, while the animations are flashy, they aren't as snappy as they are in Generations 3 or 5. They just feel slightly too long, especially when combined with the slow HP scroll that the game has. And this slog just doesn't stop outside of battle. The menus in this game are horrible to navigate through. Just look at me open my bag and try and scroll down to the repels I just bought. We can wait. Even outside of the menus, this game tries to slow you down, with entire routes and areas consisting of deep snow and mud pits that only serve to annoy you. This was my biggest gripe while replaying this game. Every aspect of it felt like it wanted me to slow down. While I do appreciate a good patience check, this is not how you do it. When most games do a patience check, it is to immerse you in the environment and the setting of the story and really get to know the characters and the mechanics and everything else that the game designers are presenting you. Getting stuck in mud does not do this. As if this wasn't enough, this game also has the most egregious examples of why HMs were taken out of this series. Roughly, at any point in time, a third of my party was solely dedicated to HM use, something that I do not miss when playing the recent titles. While we're on the cons, let me talk about why I seriously dislike Diamond and Pearl. This is something that I didn't discover until the remakes were released. Yes, the remakes were so terrible that they completely flipped my opinion on the first Pokemon game I've ever played, but we'll get back to those two later. Pokemon variety in Diamond and Pearl is, to put it simply, terrible. The worst in the series, in fact. Yes, there is a meme that Diamond and Pearl only has 2 fire types. I had no idea how much the Platinum Pokédex fixed so many of the issues with this game. not only were these Pokemon not introduced in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, but these Pokemon were not even available. Diamond and Pearl are objectively one of the worst games in the series, and I'm standing by that. Platinum fixed so many of these issues, so why did they revert them in the remakes? I will never in my life understand the decisions that they made for these remakes. I was waiting for so long for these to drop, and my disappointment with Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl was what catapulted my hate for the original games. That is almost unheard of from any remakes. They managed not only to ruin the remakes, but completely change the public's perception on two of the most iconic Pokemon games in the series. How do you mess up that badly? Platinum has since been realized to be the best way to explore Sinnoh, and therein lies a huge problem. Platinum is stuck on the DS. The only way to play Pokemon Platinum in the modern day is to purchase any of the DS or 3DS family consoles and purchase the game cartridge, or emulate the game. Since Platinum's release, there has been no way to go back and play this game through Nintendo legally. All the profit that Nintendo will ever make from Pokemon Platinum has been made. There are no more new game cartridges being created. Nintendo doesn't see any of the money spent on the consoles or the games anymore because it's being resold. It's just so confusing why they would gatekeep this stuff from everyone without giving us an option to play it on modern consoles. Maybe it was to resell a Sinnoh on a minimal budget and to capitalize on our nostalgia by making a terrible game. But my question is, did Game Freak know that the nostalgia was for Platinum? Because in their eyes, this game was a commercial failure. Chapter 2, Platinum's Butterfly Effect. This is a graph of Pokemon games by the number of copies they sold, with the game titles cut off. Where do you think Pokemon Platinum is? By most, me included, this game is heralded as one of the best Pokemon games of all time. Surely it would be near the top. Not even close. Pokemon Platinum is the third worst selling Pokemon game of all time at 7.6 million copies sold. Not a small number by any stretch of the imagination, but for Pokemon numbers, this was very small. And what would we see under it but Emerald and Crystal at 7 and 6.4 million units each. These games, the games that everyone comes back to for their respective generations, were commercial flops. So much so that after Platinum, Game Freak never made a third version again. Instead, they went with a new model, the sequel. This model includes Black 2, White 2, Ultra Sun, and Ultra Moon. X and Y were skipped in favor of an Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire remake. These sequels would serve as Game Freak's new way to change things from the first game. Add in more Pokemon, tell a slightly different story, and oh god. Yeah, this didn't work either. Black and White 2 and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon only sit slightly above the third versions, selling 8.5 and 9.1 million units respectively. Funnily enough, this forms a pretty distinct pattern of Pokemon sales. Third versions sell the worst, then the sequels, then the remakes, then the main series launches. The only two that deviate from this are Legends Arceus and Pokemon Yellow. The failure of the sequel model would then transform into the current model of Pokemon games, DLC. I couldn't find the units sold of any of the DLC from Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, and honestly, that's probably by design. So I don't know if this model's actually working for them. Only time will tell on that, I guess. So while Platinum didn't solely kill the third version, it actually sold the best out of all of them. It was the straw that broke the camel's back, and it helped Game Freak overcome their fear of changing practices from something that they had done since the series' inception. It's very odd to think that Pokemon Platinum and Emerald, two of the best Pokemon games, two of the best games, were the reason that we didn't get anything like them since. But looking at the numbers, it makes sense. We will likely never see a third version game ever again. I remember lots of speculation of Pokemon Gray, Pokemon Z, Pokemon Stars, Pokemon Gun, and it's only just now that people are realizing it's never going to happen. Honestly, I'm kind of happy that it's not. With the development cycle that Game Freak has, and with how broken and unfinished the recent releases are, there most likely wouldn't be too many changes to the games. We will never get another Pokemon game like Pokemon Platinum ever again, simply because it was Pokemon Platinum. Chapter 3, the good part of Sinnoh. Okay, enough of the doom and gloom. It's finally time to talk about why I actually love this game. First up, the music. No Pokemon game has ever truly had a bad soundtrack, and this one may be carried by my nostalgia, but there are so many tracks in this game that are just iconic. The Lake theme, Jubilife City. Anytime I'm playing this game, I'm jamming or contemplating the purpose of life. Another thing that the game does well is the Pokemon designs. There's a reason that so many Platinum Pokemon are as iconic as they are. Again, this is solely based on opinions, but I do think that the sprites really help sell a lot of the other Pokemon compared to the new ones. They look menacing, cute, goofy, or whatever the general idea of the Pokemon was. It's just really nice to revisit the personality that these Pokemon once had when you compare it to their personality in the new games. While not entirely in the scope of just defeating Cynthia, it's also nice to revisit the game for its side, daily, and post-game content. Having the day and night cycle connected to the real world clock, I think, is something that they should bring back into the Pokemon games. It's not ideal for people who want everything from the game all at once, but I liked checking the trees, the heart skill guy, and my berries each day. I liked that specific Pokemon could only be caught at certain times of day. It just made it feel a bit more immersive and kept me playing the game even if for a silly reason. I think that the Black and White games have a much more better quality side content and things to do, but I don't see that as a critique on Platinum, just a good versus great argument. Sadly, the story of Platinum isn't anything to write home about. I think Black and White and even Sun and Moon had much better stories. But what Sinnoh has in spades is lore. The origin of time, space, the distortion world, emotions, dreams, and nightmares, and the Pokemon series as a whole are all things talked about in this game. Rather than two things opposing each other, time and space worked together to create the world. The two legendaries aren't in direct opposition like they are in Ruby, Sapphire, Black and White, X and Y, Sun and Moon, and they don't necessarily work directly together like the ones from Sword and Shield. So this combo is still very unique in the Pokemon series. Additionally, what Pokemon Platinum has over other games is that it is a complete experience. It has all the Pokemon up until that point in the series. There's no sequel that continues an unfinished story. There's no DLC that you need to pay for to unlock features. This game is a complete package, a beginning and an end. Nothing truly omitted, but some side things have been lost due to the server shutting down over time. When I finally beat Cynthia on this playthrough, it was fun, rewarding, and challenging. Her team is well built, a good power level, and all her Pokemon have 4 moves. Yes, that is the bar now. The modern games handhold you, stop you in your tracks for exposition or horribly written dialogue, and annoyingly point out things that you've already noticed or would notice, and rob you of your own sense of exploration and discovery. Platinum is pretty to look at too, putting charm and thought into each area, sprite, and animation. You feel the power, serenity, and purpose of it all. The routes are interesting with different themes, ways to traverse. The caves are confusing, dark, and unyielding. They were naturally generated and bend no knee to your experience. And all of this cannot reach its intended audience anymore. Pokemon Platinum serves as a reminder for a lot of people. A reminder that even if you do many things right, you can still fail. A reminder that despite your flaws, your shortcomings, and your failures, people will still love you and accept you for who you are. To borrow a quote from Cynthia, all Pokemon and people were born because they have a part in the world. So remember, if you haven't found your part in the world yet, it's still out there, waiting for you to find it. Thanks for watching. Oh man.